good evening and good morning to everyone from wherever you guys are joining in. I know we have people from around the globe, which is very lucky for us to have. So today we are continuing with our monthly webinar series that we are doing with C Tribe to drive the conversation of construction technology and adoption and everything related to construction tech. And today we are glad to have Mr. Sagar Gandhi, a veteran in the construction technology space in India. And I think a lot of you already know him. He is a leader in Shapoorji Pallonji Engineering and Construction Company, which is one of the leading companies in India. And thank you, sir, for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, I think most of us know what C Tribe is. So, just give you a brief intro on what C Tribe is for those who don't know us. C Tribe is a community of construction technology visionaries and entrepreneurs. And the main agenda behind this is to bring all the minds building for and building in construction space in India, for India and the world. And we basically want to bring all these people together to create that ecosystem so that we push construction technology and we push construction tech in general across the Indian ecosystem in the right time, as Sagar mentioned, that country is at a cusp of boom in construction space. So with that in mind, welcome again, Sagar. uh, I would like for you to share a little bit about yourself, just a brief introduction, while everyone here, I think, knows you, but, just a brief introduction about yourself, your experience. So that will be very good for everyone to know.
Yeah, thanks, Chaitanya. Indeed, a pleasure to be part of this group and having this conversation. Uh, I I'm Sagar, and I've been with Shapoorji Pallonji for about 13 years now, and I drive technology initiatives within Shapoorji Pallonji. And probably over last 13 years as a company, I think we've been able to do multiple things with regards to construction technology, some of the digital initiatives, as well as core construction technology. So from digital initiatives, if I go back 13, 14 years, we had things with regards to Excel, where we started with Excel consolidation, Excel dashboards, things like that, where we were consolidating data from across about 100 odd projects at that point in time. So let's say daily progress reports, trackers, things like that. Moved the needle to data analysis. Our first data analysis initiative was about 2012-13, where we got into the data initiative to understand what kind of productivity we are having with different construction activities. Did that led us to some of the areas where we want to work within technology space. So we could identify the pain points which were not only hearsay but were backed by data, and then moved into e-procurement. We've done an e-procurement solution where right from requirement to floating inquiries, uh, getting quotes, uh, to doing a quote comparison, issuing a purchase order with the same conditions was achieved. And almost at that point in time, about 80 to 85% of our material procurement was automated, or rather was digitalized. Uh, then we also got into digitalization efforts where we were translating all our existing in-house process from paper platform to digital platforms, uh, to leverage more on the data part of it. Like we started only with productivity, but later on we got into quality, safety, labor management, contract management, business development, so business management in a way. So over a period of last 10 years, we've grown up our in-house applications, and we have integrated with some of the off-the-shelf available applications from a digitalization perspective. We worked into VDC, virtual design and construction, and have been implementing it in various forms across our projects. So those are the initiatives where we have worked from a IT platform or construction technology perspective. From a core construction technology perspective, we have put our efforts on various robotics initiatives. We have partnered with some of the startups which are around in market today. We've worked with them. So from that, we've also worked on to from a product development, material research perspective, where we've looked into alternatives to block work, alternatives to cement in the concrete mix, reducing the cement proportion, and various things which are looking forward. We also had an initiative within 3D printing, but we've not been able to translate that into an actual project site yet. But that's the kind of work which we have done at Shapoorji Pallonji over last 13, 14 years in the technology space.
Wow, that's a lot of. I mean, I can actually see the growth that you mentioned about starting from Excel to you going to the level of 3D printing and robotics in the mix. So this brings me to the next to the starter of the questions. We asked our community to share some questions that they have and they want to ask the industry in general. So starting off with taking Shapoorji Pallonji as the case study right now, how do you guys measure the success of digitalization efforts in your company when you are taking any project or taking any product? How do you measure those metrics, and are there any key metrics that you use or indicators that you use to track success or to track because there are a lot of conversations about not having any standards, so to say. So how do you guys measure these efforts in your company?
Yeah. So this is largely dependent on what piece of technology you are implementing. So what are you going to use for the technology for? Obviously, look, everyone starts the conversation from an ROI perspective.
Mhm.
Probably internally, what we look at is it going to change our or improve our process, which would give us better. Let's say if it is a data related stuff, it is, will it give a better data accuracy? Will it give us better data visibility? So let's say I'll give you example of BIM. So from a virtual design construction perspective, we were never looking at it as a technology that will be a 3D model visualization. Yes, those are byproducts, but does that improve our productivity trend, for example, or does that improve our billing accuracy? So
Mhm.
the metrics are defined depending on the technology. So what kind of process improvement it can do? Probably will it reduce our dependency on individuals? So when I say this, it is not about replacement of people, but being dependent on individual view of things or individual process, because not everything can be defined in process. So being, and one of the big challenge which we face as an industry today is the skilled resource. So if you
Mhm.
look at skilled resource, robotics, for example, when we worked along with one of our partners for Blockwork Robo, the intent was to find that quality of masons who can do that kind of job.
Mhm.
We are doing skilling initiatives, we do multiple things, but then still it cannot cope up with the work which we have. So end of the day, we had to get robotics in place. So that was again reducing people dependency, correct? So how are we doing that? Because trained resources is a challenge. And how do we future proof ourselves? So apart from basic ROI stuff, it is also about these things. And not only this, but also internally we look at how can we scale it. So it is not about having a one project or a two project wonder, but can it become integral to Shapoorji Pallonji way? So we have our internal processes is called SP way. So if
Okay.
we can have it as a part of Shapoorji Pallonji way and implement it. So intent is it scalable? So
Mhm.
these would be two ways. One is direct impact, and other is it scalable so that we future proof ourselves. We make sure it is implementable on multiple.
Makes sense. I mean, that is where, every conversation, even when I work with different companies, every conversation dies at ROI,
Mhm.
because when it comes to return on investment, the metrics are very skewed. I mean, you don't know how to measure that ROI, right? And uh, construction being construction, it takes 2, 3, 5 years to complete a project. By the time when you realize that ROI, it is already too far ahead. You are already into other projects, and you've already not been you've not been able to realize what you made. So as you mentioned, probably a long-term vision is what helps you when you're picking up a product or picking up a technology and adopting it in your company, or how does that work?
So I'll give you example of long-term gestation. So when we started off VDC in 2010, 2011 within
Mm,
the company, uh, if I go back and look at my those initial presentations, since then we have been speaking about data. So it was
mm,
not like I said, we did not restrict VDC only for let's say for example model-based quantity takeoffs or model-based quantity progress tracking, but
mm,
also about data. And the vision then, the CEO then, the current CEO, we have been lucky that those guys share the same view. It is not about having a technology implemented giving results within, let's say, a quarter or a year. There are some technologies where we have invested for about 6 years, 7 years for results to come out. So robotics being one of that. We started robotics in early 2040.
Wow.
So
Very,
there have
that's
been times where it has been long gestation period.
nice. It's probably the time of the IBM robots that started moving around with football. Probably even before that.
Just before that, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. So when it comes to strategizing for this, like you kind of touched over them, but just asking it formally, when it comes to strategizing, because I think a lot of construction companies struggle in this particular path. Construction being construction, there are so many processes and there's so many things to look at. So when you're trying to strategize your digital transformation journey today, starting off, from your probably an Excel based or a paper based workflow,
Mhm.
how did you guys take it step by step versus, or what did you take up first? How should a company typically approach a digital transformation, in journey?
So two things which we looked into. One is we strictly speak about it is we are not doing technology shopping.
Hmm.
So there is no fear of losing out. Hey, you know what? Company A is implementing this or company B is implementing this. So
Hmm.
there is no fear of missing out of something. So there's no FOMO here. No technology shopping. We will implement on things which leads. So let's say there is data, a lot of data. It can be ERP based data. It can be our internal applications data. Those
Hmm.
data lead us to a decision where what technology or what are the pain points where we need support. So within
Okay.
Shapoorji Pallonji, first let's say to give you an example of robotics of block work, the intent to work in that space was through our data analysis of productivity, which led us to these things because
Hmm.
that was impacting us more than anything else.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think the decision making is driven by data rather than a gut feeling, or probably on just the FOMO feeling of, hey, you know what, this is a new technology on the block and we have not used it.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, to your second part of your question, when you said how should companies look at it, uh, the way we would suggest is we've identified the pain points. So, like I said, productivity was the issue. So we started tracking the productivity, and thereon we started building on technologies which would support that.
Hmm.
Similarly, from a company, let's say for example, a company is looking at it, you should look at what kind of uh, processes you feel a pain with. So let's say for example, a small size or a mid-size company may have a procurement issue. So look
Hmm.
at a procurement solution. Don't distribute it amongst department. Don't look at it as is it a planning function or is it a costing function or is it a finance function. Look at procurement as a full end-to-end activity, and
Hmm.
then get one solution that will do an end-to-end implementation rather than just doing one part of, let's say, floating inquiry or just doing one part of reverse auction. Does not
Hmm.
help.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you're doing one process end to end, definitely gives much better results, and you gain a lot of confidence within. So for internally for us also, when we were doing these things, there was a lot of support and confidence from our execution team for these kind of initiatives.
Okay, nice, nice. So that brings me to another point, because you mentioned about gestation, you mentioned about investing in technology, and ROI we have already kind of touched on. So just to ask that question again, ROI, like have you been able to now, because you have these long-term projects that have already been there, have you been able to put some numbers or quantify your ROI? Have you been able to measure your ROI, so to say? Is that something that is measurable, or is it still, something that we yet to be realized?
So
Because when
I
it
don't
comes to,
think we ever do an ROI based kind of investment. Like as a company, we've always believed in technology. So we were one of the first construction companies. So culturally, what I'm trying to say is culturally, we have been a company who's always invested in technology.
hmm,
So our first ERP in-house solution was in probably mid 90s.
hmm,
So you look at those kind of things where the company, the owners have always been forward looking.
hmm,
That has always helped us from being neutral to technology rather than just looking at from an return on investment. These are all future investments.
hmm,
To be very specific of how do we measure the success of project is we look at scalability. So if we have taken any initiative and if we are able to implement on, let's say, 10% of the projects or 20% of the projects? Or has this particular process been institutionalized within the organization? That is a victory for us, rather than has it really reduced 10 working hours or 10 man hours or 100 man hours or 10% of workforce required. That I don't think is a measure within Shapoorji Pallonji.
So this is another very interesting question that it brings up, because Shapoorji Pallonji being Shapoorji Pallonji, it's a large company, right? So does the ROI philosophy change for a smaller company versus a large company? And then how do you differentiate? Because I think a lot of guys here, they are trying to pitch to different companies, right? They definitely reach out to the Shapoorjis and the L&Ts and so on, but they also try for a tier 2 or a tier 3 company, depending on the solution that they're trying to approach. And when the conversation goes there, then ROI is the biggest parameter that kind of blocks them, a lot of them, right? So how does that change, and what would you do if you were suppose leading a smaller company or a mid-sized company versus a Shapoorji?
So it goes back to my previous example. Let's look at the procurement example, correct? So if I were a small or a mid-sized company and someone is pitching procurement solution to me, and if it is just going to do a part of the solution, I may not be too interested. Then the ROI calculations, because I'm still using two systems or two processes to drive the full procurement activity. Right? So if there is a solution which comes and pitches me saying, hey, for construction industry, procurement end to end, we can give this solution. And this will also integrate with your existing ERP for payments and everything, is a solution. Right? So as long as you are able to replace one full activity, a value addition cannot come for a small size company or a mid size company. Second part to it is, like for a construction company, it is don't have a all or nothing approach. It should be exactly inverse for a startup. When they pitch, you pitch for a full end-to-end solution. Don't say I've just solved a 60% problem or a 80% problem, because if there is two systems that are going to be used, it will never fly through. So that's what I feel. If it were a small or a mid-sized company. Also, second is, many a times probably people look at the volume of construction or the top line of construction companies. Construction companies really work on a very, very razor thin margins. The margins which probably the companies may not even think of, correct? So to price your product from a top line perspective is not a right way to do it. Look at providing SaaS solutions where there is a subscription and it is reasonable. So if that is implemented, it brings in a lot of value. Third point is, licenses cannot be user based, because if you have to implement a technology, you have to implement a technology on a project side, let's say, or for a particular department. You cannot keep on changing the licensing agreement from user based to a project based license kind of thing. So if you have a project based license or a function based license, what benefit it gives is, it encourages more and more people registering, rather than having handful of people doing multiple tasks on the platform.
That actually is a very interesting insight, because I think a lot of these guys, they definitely have this question, because when they go out and pitch to a company, that pricing is also another question that comes in, Sagar, which is, what is that price which we can call under reasonable? Because again, when you pitch a particular solution, even if you're asking for 5,000 rupees per month, then also there are customers who will say too expensive. And what are they basing that expensive out of? And how do we break that barrier, when you want to enter into a company?
Correct. So now look at this example which you give. Let's say, for example, 5,000 rupees per month per user. And if I were a small or a mid-sized company, what I would think is, or even large company, why not large companies? Correct. What do they will all of a sudden think is, okay, I have 10 users, it is 50,000 rupees. Why not just have 3 users doing task of 10 users? Now, all of a sudden, to fit into the software piece of the game, I've reduced 10 people task to 3 people. It is not going to give the desired outcome. So rather than that, let's say, for example, instead of that 50,000, it is, let's say, 30,000 or even 50,000 for that matter per month, but then all people on that project site can use. And all of a sudden you have changed the game. Any which ways you were going to earn a revenue of 50,000 from that particular project, you're generating the same revenue but better results, because entire project site is going to contribute to that particular technology implement.
Interesting.
So
So
what happens is, when you do project licensing, let's say for example procurement, your vendors will come on board.
correct.
Your other functions will come on board. It is not restricted only to procurement. Then you will say, hey, you know what, costing department, you also come here. Planning, you also come here. Right? Because it is the same cost.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think there is always a requirement of innovative pricing. And I think also there is a storytelling that goes along with it, because sometimes, like you said, when you're explaining the ROI, that ROI has to be sometimes shown instead of, them realizing, because you may be cutting down on a particular process, or you may be automating a particular process, but how does it drive value for them? That becomes a very interesting conversation to have with the customer.
What also happens is, many a times, because for technologies where we have implemented things, our the software vendors, they have taken, or some of our other technology partners, they have taken our reference. So let's say for example, when they are pitching to their new client, if there is someone from a large construction company saying, yes, this has helped us in this particular way, it adds a lot of value.
Correct. That basically you mean that the
reference
customer references definitely help.
Yeah.
Perfect. But this also brings to another point, which is, do companies budget out a certain amount that they would like to spend annually, or maybe, in certain vision on technology? Because technology is not only solutions, right? It is also hardware. You have to buy laptops, you have to buy phones, iPads, you have to buy internet service providers, and everything comes into play. So we are already fighting for that very small budget. So is there a thumb rule of, a typical construction company allocating a percentage of budget to these technologies, or they should be looking at?
So I'll give you an example of Shapoorji Pallonji. Within Shapoorji Pallonji, we don't consider basic equipment as part of technology budget.
Nice.
That is basic hygiene. Laptops, computers, all of that is not part of technology budget.
Nice.
Right. So irrespective, you implement a technology or not, you have to give that to the staff on the project sites. Correct. So we don't consider that as part of technology. That's the first point, and that's why I was smiling. As the second part is, many a time there are software solutions. Now again, going back to virtual design and construction, we end up creating, let's say for example, a 3D model or some kind of data information which is not processable either on a hand phone or a laptop or a computer which is there at the project site. So what happens is, we end up working with some central team which has high compute devices, who will work on those computers and just give reports. And it is defeating the purpose of digitization. Digitization, the benefit will come if people at the project site, the first person entering data, is using your platform.
Right.
So if it is to be on mobile phone, it need not work on, let's say, a latest Samsung or an iPhone, but also has to be compatible with the, let's say, probably Android 6 or 7 or 8 or whichever version. I'm saying, because we have people who cut across the entire value chain, where they would probably have different, set of gadgets which they are using, different understanding of technology. But if we are able to provide them a technology which they can use on their device, I don't think we have ever had a resistance for implementing technology.
Okay, but with so many solutions coming up, Sagar, on a daily basis, as we said, we are budding up with new startups here, and there's obviously international products that are there, and you have a certain pool of money, right? Large companies have a bigger pool, probably a smaller company will have a smaller pool. Right. So firstly, how does a typical construction company budget out this amount, that, okay, I'll be setting certain amount of money, because you have razor thin margins, right? You're already running on very small margins. So setting out money for this, which is again going to have its own challenges. So what is the mindset typically for a construction company when they
So within Shapoorji Pallonji, we have a fixed budget, which is a percentage of our turnover.
Okay.
Which we have for technology initiatives. Okay. And while we make sure that we use this, some of it, a good part, when I say almost 50 to 60%, is in an investment which is with long gestation. And there would be a smaller investment which would be for ongoing things. So probably something that we are improving it, or a new solution which we have looked into, which is integrating with our ERP, for example, we will spend on it. But for a long gestation, probably long-term impact solutions would get a significant part of the budget. That's how we allocate the budget also. We will not allocate budget just for, what, hey, this is a new product, let's invest.
So is it a company level budgeting, or is it a project level budgeting? And do you see
Company level.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
No technology cost is booked on project unless we have institutionalized it, unless we have made it as a standard process. We don't book the cost on project.
Okay.
Till that time, it is a corporate overhead.
Okay. Nice. And is it again the same for smaller guys? Again, reason I'm coming there is because a large chunk of construction companies are these, tier 2 and
absolutely. For them also, it is going to be difficult. Look, the challenge is first time implementation. So anything that you do, first time implementation cost is going to be a huge spike. Thereafter, maintaining it is easy. So while you do that investment, you have to be 100% sure that yes, this is working. So that's when we do proof of concept and all of those kind of stuff. But once they bite the bullet, then that 1 or 2 year, it will be a huge spike. It will be a significant part of their probably annual profits, or the percentage of their revenue. It will be a very huge. So you look at it, construction company invest much less than even a percent of their annual turnover, or probably 0.5% also is a very high number, which I'm speaking. You can talk to all large companies and you will realize large mid size, no one is beyond it. And I'm excluding the basic hardware requirement which is there for every construction company.
Coming to the next point, because we're talking about adoption challenges also. So apart from money, if we keep money aside, what other challenges you have typically seen, and be very candid, right, in terms of the product adoption or product journey, the reason that is hindering products from being adopted by these construction companies? What are the challenges that you see? And it could be, from the product side, or from the startup side, or from the company side, anything that you would like to share.
So I'll tell you this. For example, within Shapoorji Pallonji, we have been lucky because we have not had that much of resistance in implementation because of the existing culture in the organization. The organization has always been positive towards new technology. But at the same time, while we are implementing, like I said, data leads us to where we want technology, and not the vice versa. Technology is not leading us, but data leads us to technology. And when there is a pain point, so let's look at when we do model based billing, client billing, subcontractor billing. So in that entire process, when an engineer on the project site is entering a data of, let's say, work which he has executed, he's entered it once. Thereafter, he does not have to look at it. Today, if let's say, for example, if that were a manual process, he has to keep it, let's say, for example, somewhere in his WhatsApp, then translate end of the month to an Excel file, then give that Excel file to, let's say, costing engineer, a billing engineer, and then the billing. Right? Vis-a-vis, every day he does updates on a mobile phone app, and that translates into, let's say, a subcontractor bill or a client bill. So there is no reason for him to, probably not implement that. One of the big challenges in our industry is everyone is doing an extended work hours. And those extended work hours are largely due to data related things. Either it is data entry or data processing to create some reports. If you take that time away, you would not reduce number of people required for the task, but you will definitely be giving them a better work experience where they are probably enjoying analytical work rather than data entering work.
Yeah, there was a recent controversy on this where a number was quoted and it blew up very bad. Another thing that comes up, and this is a question from one of our audience previously submitted, right? So very interesting one. Is there a demographic factor to all this when it comes to adoption? Like being a large organization, obviously younger guys are very digital savvy. They are, literally, always on phone or iPad or technology. And typically it has been assumed that the larger, the elder, senior guys are not very tech savvy. So do you see that kind of an actual problem or a challenge when you're implementing a solution in your organization?
So in our company, I'll say two examples. Uh, Interestingly, we have not seen a age-wise demographic challenge from a user-based perspective.
Hmm.
Uh, we have not seen that challenge because of the value which was created.
Hmm.
Uh, so our in-house application, which we implemented for quality and safety, uh,
Hmm.
we had people across different age groups, and we used to track about the issues, like let's say a quality issue or a safety issue raised by different people. We used to look at demography. We used to look at their stint within the organization, and there was no particular bucket where it was, overtly high or overtly low. We didn't have that kind of scenario, and we've been tracking that data for 6 years.
Wow.
So that's one point on age of users. Similarly, on when I mentioned we did e-procurement and had about 80% of our material procurement on the system. The
Hmm.
most interesting part there was in 2014, we had all small vendors, you know, tier 2, tier 3 vendors who were willing to do everything digital
Wow.
vis-a-vis a large player which has pan India presence.
Wow. Very interesting. That is
And
not
that
very commonly heard of.
and that even today, where we are doing some vendor related stuff, we have found our vendor partners who are much smaller in size, restricted to let's say a city or a town,
Hmm.
having more eagerness to implement this over a large player who has pan India presence.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So it brings me to another point, which is again related to people. Uh, how do you had mentioned this earlier about upskilling of your staff or employees, your people on this? Do you also invest on training them on technology? And if so, how do you go about it?
So I'll tell you this: within company, we don't have any probably a vertical or a team which is technology engineers or a particular technology managers kind of thing. We
Hmm.
have just a central technology team, which is a lean and thin team. But what we do is, while we implement the technology, we will upskill the particular person. So let's say, for example, if I am doing something which is to do with client billing,
Hmm.
we will have the technology done centrally. We'll pilot it. We'll create a process.
Hmm.
The technology team creates a process, and while we implement it, the respective function which is getting impacted by that technology gets upskilled. So that's why the benefit is it is a very targeted training and targeted audience.
Hmm.
That's where implementation success goes up. It is not like a common training. Let's say, for example, if you're talking of BIM, call all let's say 100 users or 100 participants and do a generic training. We would not do that. We would do very targeted, audience specific and content specific training.
Okay. Okay. And what role does leadership in an organization play to ensure or to push that digitization across? Because there is some resistance every time when a new solution comes in, and it may depend because there could be multiple causes or multiple reasons for it, right? Sometimes it is also about security, job security, some because of the image that a technology has. Like you mentioned, it is about improving work life quality rather
Correct.
than reducing people. But unfortunately, fortunately, that's the kind of vision that typically goes out when we say technology. People by default assume that it is going to lead to loss of jobs and so on. There are many other such things. So what role does leadership play to make sure that they are able to, as you said earlier also, that your CEO has also been very supportive of the fact, and you have also been able to lead that initiative, right? So how does leadership evolve, and what should a leadership do to be able to push digitization?
So look, the reason is, let's say, for example, when I said in mid 90s, we had our ERP system. We had a
Hmm.
knowledge management portal developed in late 90s. Correct.
Hmm.
Now, that speaks about the culture. Those people would have probably retired today,
Hmm.
but it has to largely do with culture of the organization. If we
Hmm.
breed that kind of culture, for probably, and we've been an organization who has been in business for about 160 years, correct? So, uh, culture is central to us, is central to our all thought processes.
Hmm.
And coming from a leadership perspective, we have the leaders who have always thought long term. It's not been about 1 2 years 3 years. I think we have always invested in things which have much longer time to mature and show results.
Hmm.
uh, a top-down approach, internally we feel it is an old school approach. We don't think there is anything top-down. We internally we call it value add. So if we have something that is value add, there is no top-down push required to implement things. Because top-down, in our opinion, and we have tried it, not that we have not been part of that journey, but earlier on in 2010, 11, we tried many initiatives top-down. It works only till the time the top pressure is there. So there is no active buy-in. If there is no active buy-in, you may see the technology, you may see technology implemented, but you may not see the desired results. So top-down and all is good to just project that, hey, you know what, we have implemented this technology. Start looking at, is it institutionalized? Answer would be no.
But when it comes to, when I talk to startups, right, when they go and they pitch to companies, they have applied both top-down and bottom-up approach, right? When they go and they talk to a project, and some of them consider every project as a client, not even going to a company level, right? Bottom up, because of the same thing, that they will give that experience to the site and they will push it up eventually. And that process takes a lot of time to convert. And if you go top down, again, there are a lot of challenges because you've sold it to the top management, but does it actually implement to the bottom level? So what is the right approach for these startups to reach out and, communicate with the companies of their solution and how they can benefit?
I feel it is more about storytelling about the application or the product which they are selling and what value it add it will do. So go and pitch with the full solution in mind, saying that this is how it benefits, and implement it end to end. If you're going to give any part results, all of that would happen because, look, today everyone wants to showcase their project or their company doing one-off technology stuff, so which is for to grab eyeballs, correct? So as startups, my suggestion would be is don't fall into those kind of traps where someone is just utilizing to improve their resumes. Let's say don't go and approach an individual who would just want to show, yes, you know what, I had explored this technology and I've implemented it on 1 or 2 projects. Intent should be where we are looking at, is it scalable, is it implementable across whichever company, 1 project, 2 project company, or 100 project company. Just doing it bottoms up or top down, I don't think either way it is just going to solve the problem. There has to be a realistic assessment of, is the product ready? If the product is ready, go pitch for an end-to-end solution and have a right storytelling around the product and the benefits it has.
Is there a particular, I mean, there are no designations, the designations keep changing, but is there a particular set of people you should target as a startup when you're going to have a conversation of a particular solution?
It depends on what solution you have. So let's say, for example, you are giving a planning kind of a solution. Probably the target audience would be operations guys and the planning team. Vis-a-vis, if you are doing something else, which has to do with, let's say, AR, VR, you would probably have to go and approach the corporate office because this decision would not be taken at a project level.
Okay. That is very interesting to know, because I think that is where a lot of people get stuck, trying to identify who will be a good decision maker to actually hit that conversation with and show that thing. Because as you said, AR, VR requires some kind of an understanding of technology and value, right? Versus maybe a planning solution, which a planning engineer will know better than a corporate office. So going to the next topic of safety and productivity. So safety, you mentioned earlier that you guys are also investing into safety technology, right? So what are your views on improving of safety standards through technology? What kind of solutions or what kind of things are you implementing or have you successfully implemented in this space? And that you could share with the team.
On safety, again, we were focusing more initially on what kind of safety issues we have, rather than just going out and, let's say, for example, implementing a technology which will look after, let's say, basic PP or look after, let's say, edge protection. So we were trying to identify which were those issues which are repetitive in nature for Shapoorji Pallonji and Shapoorji Pallonji projects, and take corrective action, because some of those actions need not be a technology solution, but it can be internal training, it can be internal process correction, can be internal people roles and responsibility related stuff. So those are the things which we look from the data and then we do. but we did explore some of these variable technology from a fatigue factor, from a health factor. But some of the challenges which we have faced there is labor had concerns about having, let's say, a band or a tracker attached to them. Because while we gave them a comfort that, you know what, we are not taking your location for tracking your exact location, but it is more from, let's say, an edge protection. But still they did not have a comfort. So, but fatigue tracker is something which we feel is an area we did explore, something which has to do with video analytics from a perspective of fatigue indicator. But we've not been able to find success there. But we are still exploring that option and looking at it. The other area where we were working was simulated induction and training. So one is where you probably I think we, along with one of my colleagues, we had visited China, where there was an actual simulation of the entire safety gear, right from, let's say, a safety harness where there is a free fall and it locks itself. So while induction is done, the laborers are made to do that. When they do that, they realize the benefit of it. They wear a hard hat, something falls on it. So they understand the benefit of it. So it is actually demonstrated. What we think is, if we are able to do that visually, let's say if there is a free fall, that would also help. So we did explore that a little bit, but then thereafter our priorities changed and we have not explored that too much. But that is one area which definitely we are looking into, where we want to look into a simulated training / induction. Within safety also, from a cultural perspective, where we were trying to see how we can have that, we had probably made a film, a safety film, which had a content which was to the taste of or liking of the workers. And we published it. It is available on YouTube also, where probably people, we use that for our induction, because our regular induction training sessions are too boring for people, where it would be slides, or even if it is nice interactive PowerPoint also. Rather than that, we thought we'll make a story around it. We'll make a movie around it. It's a short movie, which will have a storyline. And we emphasized on hitting subconscious mind with all of these safety gear benefits.
Nice, nice. I will ask one last question because I know people have questions as well. So I should ask one last thing, because you talked about, you are exploring different things. So what would be, if you were designing, or if you were looking up at an ideal, construction technology solution. So what features or what things would you like for that particular solution to address? Basically, I'm trying to gauge, what is missing today in terms of construction technology in your experience, based on what you have come across, because you have explored a lot of different things that are still not addressed, areas or areas of concern that are still not addressed, and are an open field for anyone looking here for ideas.
Honestly, if you look at it, construction industry, if you look everything, there are more than one company working on the same problem. And I think we have a very, very good coverage with respect to solutions available in the industry. And this space, construction technology space, in last 7-8 years have really mushroomed. And I think just before this session, I told you that we are just in time for it. I think the kind of growth country will have, we'll probably have growing, building at least 8 to 10 times more than what we are building today. And from a people perspective, resource perspective, probably the growth will be only 2x or 3x. So whatever is the gap has to be bridged by technology. So from a technology solutions perspective, you look on the data side, we have good coverage. I'm telling you, from a data side, within India, we have amazing solutions. It is just matter of how all of this integrates for a construction company. The areas which I feel where we need a lot of work to happen is core construction technology, which has to do with robotics, which has to do with material research. One of the thing which we have is, in material research space, we have a very, very less presence. You look at all our traditional materials, that is one thing where we don't have very good replacements which have come in. So IT platform, IT technology perspective, I think The only thing is you can improve on your analytics, you can do things, but those are all add-ons. There is no space where we don't have, forget about one company. We'll at least have 2 or 3 companies working in that space.
Correct. Correct. Awesome. Awesome. So I think I will wrap up the conversation here, and then I will open up the question and answer with the people here. So, but thank you for this insightful session so far, Sagar. It was really, really insightful for me, and I'm assuming for everyone who was listening, it would be very helpful. So I
Thanks,
will
Ed. It was a pleasure.